Hi folks, Max Muir, Action for Dogs, Edinburgh Lothian's dog trainer. Thanks for tuning in. I'd like to talk today about recall from a completely different angle. Free roaming and the effects it can have on you and your dog, or the partnership that you have. Free roaming before you've put in any foundational training for your recall. In dogs who learn to exercise their instincts in environments that you've exposed them to, can prove to be very problematic for the owner. Foundational training is so important. So when you have dogs, perhaps you've got a dog from a working line. Some domestic dogs from non-working lines can also have very strong working drives, and it could be scent, it could be wildlife, it could be chase, it could be any one of those things. But when you tell your dog to come and your dog can ignore you, you've given a command that you can't enforce. Now, I know it's convenient. It's very tempting to take your dog to the local country park or a lovely countryside setting, an empty field, a busy public park, and let your dog off. And if your dog learns to ignore you, and those instincts are exercised consistently and on a frequent basis, and then you try to clamber back and start your dog training, it can be uphill at first, and there's no getting away from that. I was on a webinar the other night, and they used this illustration, which was absolutely perfect. Create your own aquarium. Now, what that means, when you consider dolphins in an aquarium, they're in this pool, and there is nothing in that pool at all. So when it comes time to train and interact with the trainer, that is a great source of stimulation for them. So the trainer and the dolphin equally profit from it. They get a lot more from it. When you have strong competing factors, it goes against the training process, and it becomes very difficult for the handler to do that. Gun dog trainers, for example, with strong working dogs that they know have strong working drives, will take them to places, they will nurture that, they will control that, and they will work with that in an environment that sets them up to succeed. And free roaming, particularly if spaniels come to mind, but it can be the same with Labradors, Vizslas, Pointers, anything like that. Dogs with really powerful instincts who they get that dopamine release early in their lives without any foundation that's laid. And for the domestic dog owner, it can be inconvenient to spend a period of time working on the basics before they're ready to test it and prove it. Some people buy a whistle. I love whistle training. It's one of the mainstays of all the training that I do. But I'm very careful where I teach it. And I'm very careful once the dog knows the cues, where I progress to training it before I can actually call it a trained behavior. And depending on each dog, that can take any number of weeks, months, even longer. It all depends on that. But free roaming is very addictive for your dog. It becomes a dopamine fueled state, and some dogs can become mesmerized by it. I got an email the other day, and it's not an uncommon email for dogs who become absorbed with blowing leaves. And it's almost like hypnosis. They become mesmerized by this, and it really, really winds them up. Now, if they're in an open space, windy environment, and they've had no foundational training, that environment is paradise. It is heaven for them, and it can prove very problematic for the owner to try and get their dogs back. So foundational training is so important. Foundational training saves the dog and saves you stress and grief of not being able to get your dog back, because training a recall, once your dog has been able to exercise those instincts, being able to ignore you, it's out there, offline, off leash, it knows you can't get to it, it knows it can ignore you, and you suddenly become background music. That's not only irritating, but it can even prove quite risky in some areas. So the need to create your own aquarium, find a place to train where you can really work on the basics and establish good habits. That's extremely important. A trained behavior takes some time. A trained behavior everywhere you go or everywhere you want to take your dog takes time. And it takes an investment of time, and it takes an investment of learning. The whistle is not what brings your dog back to you. It's training with the whistle so the dog associates certain cues, and you have a conditioned reinforcer. That's what brings the dog back to you. And understand the basics of training, the quadrants of learning, and how to apply the classical and operant conditioning. That's what sets your dogs up to succeed. So it really pays for the owner to invest in that knowledge. Free roaming. Be very careful where you take your dogs. Be extremely careful early on where you let them off. Don't learn by accident. Set yourself up for success by protecting your dog from those environments, from exercising those instincts, and from learning to ignore you. Education, training is so important for your dog, rather than just let them live a happy, free roaming lifestyle. This is Max Muir, Action for Dogs, Edinburgh Lothian's dog trainer. Thank you.